petty.
Stream is live.
And here we go. Sorry, we're a few minutes late. Had some technical difficulties, which hopefully will not be persisting throughout the night. And as you may have noticed, this is not our regular Wednesday live stream. We're going live tonight at Monday. It's a change of pace, change of scenery. It feels completely different. Okay, that's a lie. It feels like any other live stream night. But that's a great thing because I'm here with Earth's Mightiest Critics. I'm Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. We have Mark the Movie Man Krawcheck of the Spoiler Room Productions, Spoiler Room Podcast and Special Mark Productions, and Mike Crowley of You'll Probably Agree, aka YPA Reviews. So thanks, gentlemen. We're here tonight to talk about The Walk, the third of 4 Stephen King movie adaptations coming out in 2025. Theatrically, there's also the Return to Derry or Welcome to Derry miniseries on HBO that takes place in the It universe. That's coming out soon. So I was looking forward to The Long Walk. I've heard about the novel for decades. It was written under Stephen King's Richard Bachman alias. Everyone I know growing up said, you got to read The Long Walk. I never got around to it until preparing for this show. And I watch it, and it is probably one of my favorite Stephen King stories of all time. And I watched the film, and it is one of the biggest disappointments and head-scratching WTFs that I've ever seen. To the point where I feel like if you've never read the book, go see the movie and then read the novel. If you have read the book, avoid the film like the plague. Someday they might adapt The Long Walk in a way that's true to the source material and actually gets the point. But Francis Lawrence, who brought us the Hunger Games, a series without which if it weren't for The Long Walk, and possibly Death Race 2000, which we discussed on Mark's podcast last night, the Hunger Games would not have been a thing. Same with Battle Royale and a lot of these dystopian future people competing, fighting to the death in like a game show setting. A lot of that stuff wouldn't exist. I mean, Squid Game, for crying out loud. So we're going to talk about The Long Walk tonight. We're going to get way far into it, and we're going to have spoilers because there's no way to really evaluate what happened with this film without getting really into it. So before we begin, I would like to take the temperature of the room and find out, A, what did you think of the film? B, have you read the novel? Are you familiar with the source material? I'm going to start with Mark because I think I know your answer on both points, but maybe you'll surprise me.
Well, I didn't realize this was a Richard Bachman or Stephen King book, whatever book. I didn't realize it was a book until I saw, the trailer or the poster first off of saying, adapted from Stephen King. I'm like, oh, okay. I honestly had not heard of it. And I did read books. We've discussed, I read books when I was a kid. Words burn now. Usually, I can read comics, but my brain has trouble with novels for various reasons. But I used to read a lot of King when I was younger. But I had never heard of The Long Walk. But and when I saw the movie, I was like, okay. It fell definitely middle of the road. As I put in my review, it's about just barely as good as my nachos. Just barely as good. I did have extra cheese in my nachos, more cheese than chips, so it's always a good thing, but just barely. And we'll get into more of why I thought it was just kind of okay. And Honorable Son number 1 felt the same way going to it, even worse. And maybe it's because I'm cold, old, and I've seen a lot of war movies, but I get what they were trying to go for, but it felt very lazy.
Mm.
There's only one bright spot in here, and that was Janssen's performance. He, I think, carries this film. The McVrie's character, I think he is a bright spot in this film. If it wasn't for his performance and his character and just him in general, I would have really been bored with this movie. And that sounds bad, but it's true. He was the bright spot in it that really kept me interested more so than anybody else in here, including evil Patton Mark Hamill. So yeah. That's where I
like that
stand.
evil Patton. I also like. I don't know if this was intentional on your part, but you said, Mark, that this was a middle of the road movie. Was that?
No, that was just a happy coinky dink. So
okay. All right, Mike. What
Well,
make thee of the road? Sorry, the long walk.
I'm going to sound sort of like the hyperbolic fool here, but I absolutely loved the film. When I walked into it, one thing I do is I make sure I don't watch trailers these days, unless it's gonna be like some movie that I just don't get because it's sort of pretentious. But when I went to go see this movie, I knew what the premise was. I didn't know how far they take it. And as we were saying in the chats, Mark said, I saw most of the kills in the trailer, which that would ruin the movie for me. If I walked into the film and then immediately I knew what was going to happen, that would turn me off. And I will say, a little part of me, it might be screwed up, but like when they killed the kid and his face is blown apart on camera, it kind of looked like a low budget horror movie. I think because of the way like they held the camera on him for a little longer. And there are some problems I have with it. The cinematography looks like digital slop. Like I was sitting close enough to the screen where, you can see what the canvas looks like, and it doesn't have that beautiful natural film grain to it. It has this rainbow colored pixels, and the movie was like filmed in this desaturated tone that just looked extremely generic and something you'd find on Vimeo rather than like a major motion picture. Mark Hamill's General George S. Patton sounded more like the Joker than George S. Patton. But I absolutely love the chemistry between Cooper Hoffman and David Johnson. I like the fact that this movie, does come out at a time where it's very important to see it, but at the same time, now with very recent events, it's a little maybe too uncomfortable for the audience to watch it now. And that's, a victim of it coming out at this time. But, I always feel like movies, they're meant to look at the past, present, and what may be the future. This movie does a good job of that. A little too over the top at the end where they're playing America the Beautiful and David Johnson's, like in tears on his knees, and then he walks home. Some flaws, but I mean, overall, it's a movie that is extremely striking. And I thought, some of the performances, Judy Greer's, for instance, although her performance is just basically crying lady, she did a very good job at it. But yeah, when you get down to the end of
I'd
it,
argue with you on that one.
Yeah.
She was like leaning way into the melodrama. I was giggling during part of it. I was like, wow. This is like she's in the Mad TV version of The Long Walk with some of those weeps. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, well, thank you for helping me set the table here. Sorry, Mike, had you read the novel?
No, I never read the novel. I only learned of its discovery when I read about the movie, and then found out it came out in '79, and it was kind of a reflection of the Vietnam War, and seeing the parallels to today is crazy. But I mean, it was a movie that was reflective of how people were drafted back then into the war, and they had very little certainty that they would come back alive. And I'm not sure if the ending was. I did read what the ending was, but which I don't think would really work for a film. But at the same time, it would be much more daring for a movie to go that way. Especially with how ominous it is. But yeah, I mean, I thought the ending was a little too over the top.
Yeah, I mean the ending. I was furious when with the way they ended the film, and my main bone of contention, and again, we're talking spoilers here, so what I recommend both of you at some point read The Long Walk, but long after you've forgotten about this conversation, because in order to describe the many fundamental problems with the film, we've got to talk about the book.
That's fine.
Now, I don't know what it is about 2025, but this is yet another example of an opening title card completely setting the wrong tone for the next like movie I'm about to watch. In this one, it opens with kind of a black screen with white typed out letters, and it's supposed to be the letter to Ray Garrity, who's our main character throughout most of the film, played by Cooper Hoffman, basically congratulating him on becoming a contestant or a walker in this walk. Now, what's wrong with that, you might ask? Well, in the novel, which again presaged the Hunger Games by several decades, the winners were announced on television. It was a national kind of pastime spectacle where they were literally drawing names lottery style out of a hat, and people were watching at home. And there were a lot of like mixed emotions among the people, like, oh, I got in, or oh shit, I got in. But this kind of like letter thing. And then they also mentioned you are going to be one of 50 people on the walk. I'm like, no, the walk is 100 people. So right off the bat, they're like changing things. I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'll play in this sandbox, but you better have a really good reason for deviating from the source material like this, because the number of contestants is important. As I mentioned, the delivery mechanism speaks to some of the other narrative kind of world building problems in the adaptation, which is, for one thing, when they start off on the walk, they do leave from this kind of a military installation. But almost immediately, as they're going through the small towns and some of the larger towns and into the cities, all along the way, instead of just the occasional person kind of dotting the side of the road, there are crowds of people lined up to see these walkers, and it becomes part of the fabric of the story. One of the early towns they pass through, a kid gets really excited because this girl who's on the sidelines, I think she like pulls up her top or something, and he runs over and starts like basically making it with her before he gets pulled back onto the walk. There's a lot more spectacle and involvement and confusion with the crowds who are coming out to watch them. A lot of resentment on the part of the walkers, because at a certain point, the kids realize that they are just there to watch bloodlust. They're not celebrities. They're kind of it's almost like a cattle parade. The whole bit about Judy Greer playing the mom and Garrity saying, well, I've just got to get to Freeport or wherever the town is to see my mom again. That scene, when we see it in the film, she's standing by herself on this empty, dusty street. In the novel, they get into Garrity's hometown, and because he's kind of the hometown hero, the place is jam-packed, and he can barely see his mother. He can barely get to her. He also has trouble getting to his girlfriend, Jan, who is the main reason that he wants to survive this walk. And he has many regrets about going on the walk, because he realizes, well, shit, I might never see the love of my life again. What have I gotten myself into? So a couple of the driving motivations of the characters in this are completely done away with, out of hand, and replaced by this easy, sloppy, hey, I want to revolutionize the system and take out the major, who's Mark Hamill's character at the end of the walk, which, and we'll get to that ending soon, he does. And the aftermath of that completely does not make sense in the context of this universe they've set up. So there's that. Now, I can get, and probably will, into a lot of the other like character problems, and because they slashed the cast of characters in half, for some reason they felt the need to mix personality traits and character arcs of certain characters and blend those into existing characters and shoehorn them to the point where, if you're a fan of the novel and you're watching the book, you will, this movie has been in development for like 4 decades, or some people have been crying out for it. It's been trying to get off the ground. And now that it is, I can't imagine anyone who's a fan of the book watching this and not being incensed.
Yeah, and I didn't know the book, but for me, I wasn't really blown away with it. One, because of a lot of the kills, which I was actually disappointed of. Most of the kills that happened in the trailer. I mean, literally, that was part of their promo. If you watch that trailer, 80% of the kills that happen for the shock value or whatever are in the trailer. So there's no real drama, tension there. Kind of who's going to buy it. Most of these guys are fodder, But second of all, maybe I've just watched way too many war films, because in the 80s, we were talking about with Mike, there's a bit of an age difference here. Growing up in the 80s, you could not avoid Vietnam films. I mean, Vietnam films, whether mainstream or even direct to video or even they were everywhere. And so I've seen enough of them to where I watched this. And first off, you can tell what they were trying to go for because the age of the car alone, where it's not in, as far as where the world is, they don't mention a date, but this is set like late 70s, early. You could tell just by the cars and the clothing and everything that it's trying to be, they don't want to specify a date, but it's during that time, because I don't think they specify a date on the letter. So it's like, okay. And then when you get all the guys together and they start talking, the dialogue in this script, I'm like, wow, they ripped this from so many Vietnam guys getting off the bus for boot camp discussions where they're meeting each other and the little groups. And then when they're walking along, I'm like, these are guys on patrol in the woods. I mean, the way that they're talking and everything. And I get the gist, and there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. But this screenplay that they put together, I'm like, this has to be like some Cliff's Notes of what Stephen King actually wrote, because I'm watching this going, majority of this is so cliche for me, because I've watched so many Vietnam films when I was a kid that I was like, okay, there's that film. Oh, here's this dialogue. There's that character. And there's nothing wrong with that if you put a little twist on it, but you don't get that twist with these characters. These characters are so, for me, cookie cutter tropes, to the point of I didn't really care, except for David's character, McVries. I liked his character because out of all of them, his character, the way they wrote him and everything, the way he's performed, felt a little different than everybody else. Even our Garrity guy is our main soldier guy, similar to the main character we had in Full Metal Jacket. If you look at his behavior, his mannerisms, and that, it's like, and so I guess for me, it was road really well traveled many times. So I was hoping for something at the end too, and it ended up being a predictable end. And so by the end of it, I'm like, it was all right, but I'm like, I've seen this done better. I've seen this type of movie done better.
You see, I don't mind the cliches so much, as I feel like it was an effective war film about people who were thrown into a wartime setting. And yeah, it might be a little cliche, this and that, but like, how do you not write something that is sort of cliche at that point? Now, I know Ian made a point where he said that Garrity's actual motivation was his girlfriend. I'm wondering how that would have worked in the context of the book compared to the movie, because it feels kind of like, because I see that in every war movie where someone has like a picture of their girlfriend and is like, this is my gal, this is why I'm here. I'm wondering, how would it be different than something like that, like in the way it was written in the book?
Yeah. He's got a really conflicted kind of relationship with his girlfriend in the book, because he talks about how like she was so desperate for him to, kind of going back to almost like the draft dodging metaphor. The key difference is that in the movie, McVries has this whole drawn out, ultimately lame speech about, how everyone, even though not everyone volunteers, everyone kind of volunteers, or for this thing. In the book, it is a volunteer thing. You sign up and you have to write an essay and try and get in. And there are some people who do it as a lark, and there's other people who are really, they want to do it because they're insane, and other people, they do it because of the prize. Now, in the film, and this goes to the screenwriter, I don't have him pulled up here, and it just drove me crazy, because it's like, in the film, if you win the long walk, you get a wish. I'm thinking, a wish. What is it? This isn't magical Dark Tower genie territory. Okay. In the novel, you get a large cash prize, which is not, they don't put a number on it, but then it's basically you can have anything you want for the rest of your life with a couple of conditions. Like you can't do anything that would upset you. You can't, for example, and this is very similar to the Death Race 2000 plot line. You can't, ask for the long walk to be discontinued or something. But basically, like, women, money, power, whatever. Very much like Rollerball, 1975, another dystopian film that we discussed on Mark's show. But as far as the thing with the girlfriend, Garrity thinks about her a lot on the walk. And was it a mistake to sign up for this? Is she going to even be waiting for him? Because maybe she's so mad that he decided to go through with it that she's going to leave him. When they do finally encounter each other, it's a little bit weird because they're caught in this throngs, these like rocking sea of people, and he can barely get to them. And it's like he's been waiting and kind of building this moment up over the almost a week that they're out there on the road, that when it finally happens, it's like this nightmare. And he's also in a terrible condition, and he doesn't want her to see him like this. Because like a lot of folks who started off on this journey, there's almost this idea that they're going to be the same at the end as they are at the beginning. Oh, you just have to walk a bunch. But then you start over the time, you're like, oh, I got a bit of a cramp. It'd be great to sit down. Well, you can't really sit down. There's no breaks for, relaxing or taking a nap, because if you fall asleep on your feet, you might wake up dead, that kind of thing. The book really gets into the psychology of what it would mean to have to walk until you're the last person left. And I feel like if this movie had been 3 hours, you really could have gotten into it with all 100 players, as long as you cut out the nonsense. McVries, again, this is the bias of someone who's read the book, but it's also the performance. David Johnson, I liked him enough in Alien Romulus. He was the only thing I liked about that movie. But here, he's an English actor putting on a Southern accent, and I thought it was terrible. I'm not exaggerating. I did not understand half of his dialogue until after it was over. There was almost like a sound delay, because he'd say something, I'd have to think about it. I'm like, oh, that's what he said. That's what he meant. It's just, just let him be British, okay? Because it's America. It's a melting pot. You can have a black British kid just in the United States. It's the same thing when people like Brits are forced to put on a New York accent because they're, in a period piece. But also there was a touch of, and this is a trope in genre filmmaking, and Spike Lee called it out like 20 years ago or more. So when I say this is not like, I don't want this to be a boogeyman thing, but there is the magic Negro trope. And unfortunately, in this film, McVries falls into that, with the slight twist that at the end, the white guy that he is supposed to be helping to realize his potential ultimately dies, but McVries switches his character motivation on a dime and fulfills that guy's dream even after he's dead. Now, he had a character in the book. He doesn't have a character in the movie, because at the very outset of the race, when they all get there, most of them are sitting down and doing these polite introductions and like, hey, we're going to become the Musketeers. In the novel, they're all kind of guarded. Garrity's probably the most outgoing of all of them, but a lot of them are like, look, some of them understand the gravity of this. Like, we're in a walk to the death. So there's no point in making friends, because we're not going to be friends by the end of the week. Others, including McVries, the friendship that he and Garrity develop is developed over time. And McVries constantly is waffling between being a good-natured guy and being someone who gives Garrity the cold shoulder for no reason and kind of fucks with him along the way, like gets into his head and playing mind games. So you're never quite sure, does he really want to be friends, or is he just like kind of trying to gain the confidence of who he sees as a weaker player to get him out of the game? And towards the end, it really becomes clear that they do develop a friendship. But there's one dimension to this character in this movie, and it's isn't life great? We should be thankful. We're here on the walk, and why would you want to upset the system? Just go out and enjoy it. Smell the beauty. Look at the beautiful pastures. And at the end, he's like, I want to tear down the system because my friend's dead. And he does it, and it's like the movie's over.
Always look on the bright side of
Your
life.
life.
You reminded me a little bit of that. No, you know, and I get that. And what you describe, Ian, sounds like classic King. I mean, he always has that kind of friendship development, but you're not quite sure, at least until the end. You know, even with his newer books like Cell, which I read, which was far better. The book was better than the adaptation, unfortunately. And I like John Cusack, but Cell was a really interesting book that I just picked up on a whim. Again, I don't get a chance to get involved in books that often, but you had that same thing where you have this kind of friendship develop between it. And that sounds cool. Here, it did feel a little bit rushed of the friendship, and your cast of characters in this. I was trying to go figure out what exactly they were going for with this group, because no, you're right, Mike. It's not that I'm against tropes or cliches. It's just I like them better when they're done better, when they're handled a little bit more creatively or a little bit more subtly. I mean, watching this, you know immediately, and I didn't know the book at all, you know who's going to live and die. I mean, everybody that you're like, okay, he's him and him. And they even have a very interesting kind of X Factor character in here. Two of them, actually. One of them is Stebbins, who, again, spoiler, we find out he's the bastard son of the general, which I saw coming. I saw that like within 2 minutes of them walking and his attitude. I'm like, he's related some way to the general. I wasn't quite sure if he was the son or what, but I'm like that. And then you had Barkovich, played by Charlie Plummer. He was the most interesting character, and he is your standard Stephen King crazy. Because you get that in the dystopian films, you get that one crazy character. You had it in The Stand, and you have it here. And he was interesting.
He was like Henry Bowers in It. Yeah,
He was the bully, and then he ended up actually turning out to like we don't know if he's a bad person or not. He's just someone who gets stuck up in this game and gets stuck in his own head and his own mindset of, I have to survive. I'm going to antagonize everyone, and that'll work out in my favor. And then it backfires on him. And at a certain point, he's so exhausted and mentally and physically defeated himself that he gives up the game. But I thought he had one of the more interesting arcs of the film.
He was my favorite character. In the book, it's weird because in the novel, on the page, he registers as, and this is the hindsight of reading a lot of Stephen King, so it was probably very novel back in '79, no pun intended. But he does read as a flat stock Stephen King bully. But in the performance, on the screen, there is something more to him. But again, there has to be a wrench, because his last scene, I didn't notice the spoon throughout the rest of the movie.
Oh.
Well, no,
not in his final scene, the rest of the movie. No, you're right. Yeah, sorry.
In the final scene, like all of a sudden, he's like fidgeting with this spoon and fondling the spoon. I'm like, oh no, because I knew it was coming because of the way he goes out in the book. But in the novel, it just says, and then something like, and then Barkovich ripped out his own throat. Like, it's implied that he just kind of like took his fingers and ripped his throat out.
Yeah. Here
he uses the spoon as like a kind of a stabbing thing and all that. But it, again, why? there's no that my questions with all of the changes from the page of the screen is just why. The Long Walk, the novel, is a very cinematic book, and I just got this feeling that someone was hired to write the screenplay and felt, okay, I need to write something, I need to change something, when really you could just transcribe it into screenplay format, which is itself a chore and something, there's an art to it, right? But just give audiences the thing that they remember and love most about the thing they came there to see adapted. That's my stance anyway.
Yeah. See, I luckily I didn't have the experience where I read the book or saw the trailer, so it was all completely fresh to me. I mean, I've had a lot of moments where I've read the book and then I've seen the movie and I went, well, yeah, this is just a very trimmed down version of the book, and also it's missing the heart that are the elements of that book that made it work so well. How in the world can these screenwriters, mess this up? But that happens when you have to truncate something within a short, concise narrative.
Yeah, and like I said, I didn't read this, but I've run into that with adaptations. I think I've mentioned it before. The Relic, when I was reading books at 12, 13, I read The Relic, and then they did a movie version of it because it was really popular, and they completely changed the monster. They combined two characters into one, and I only read the book once, but they were that memorable. And I'm watching this going, oh, you did that. And they did it in like the laziest possible way. And in here, you had, I think, and from what you're saying, Ian, yeah, it happens to Barkovich, but what would be interesting to change it out is have Barkovich live a lot longer than he did a little bit, be one of the, because the only tension-filled, truth be told, only tension-filled part where I actually felt a little bit of that tension, anxiety, like, oh crap, was when Barkovich was getting buddy with Garrity. And he was talking about, oh, I didn't kill that kid, right? And then Garrity's kind of placating it. He's playing, he's trying to calm him down. And all the while, Barkovich has that spoon, which has an end that looks like a stabbing utensil. And for me, that was the only actual tense part because Barkovich had been playing crazy this whole time. So I'm like, oh, is he going to have him like wound him? Not kill him because I knew Garrity was going to make it. But is he going to like wound him so that, he's dealing with this wound the whole time or something? But they don't. Barkovich just does ye old screw your damn canoe and stabs, stabs himself, which I kind of saw coming, but that was like the only tense part for me. But the rest of this, though, it was just, I'm like, you're right, Ian. They don't do a good enough job within the context of the film, and for the length of time you think they would establish exactly the people losing their mind. You get it towards the end when people just start ripping their clothes off and bolting, or their one buddy who Hank is just like, he is not gonna make you like, what is even keeping this guy up? And you're looking at that and you can see how they're handling that, but that's really later in the film. It would have been nice to see some buildup of this loss of mental fortitude, basically, as they go along, to see them slowly get more crazy, but we don't get that. We just get suddenly, boom, guy we haven't seen the whole movie starts running and taking his clothes off, and they shoot him with the big, they shoot him with the big 50 cal for some reason. You're just like, okay, that was completely done just for a shock moment. And that's the thing. They leaned more towards shock moments than they did for some tension-filled dramatic character moments. And this film, the story should lean into that part more than the dramatic kill parts, because the kills are going to happen. So give me something meaty with these characters.
Well, didn't they kind of do that with the dichotomy between Garrity's outlook on life and then McFreeze's, sort of, his optimistic outlook on life, and then Garrity's sort of pessimism? They kind of did that, but I guess one problem I'd have with it that it was a little bit of like cliche writing, like, oh, I feel great. Not I feel great, but I look up to hope into the future. And then, of course, that character ends up falling to despair, which was a little confusing why he decided to do that. Why didn't they shoot him after he shot the colonel? Or, I'm sorry, the major.
At the end?
Yeah.
You would have thought they would have, with the way they were acing everybody else. I was expecting him to shoot the general, and then he'd just get riddled. Just get riddled. Because there were four other guards. There were four guards there with guns.
It could have been the end of the lottery, where just like, instead of the military, like the crowds. Here's another thing, and I keep going back to the novel, and I know it's unfair to talk to people who haven't read it, but the major in the book is a mythic, beloved, and feared character, and he's very mysterious. He's not Mark Hamill in this movie, because they also, integrate the Major in the film in a way that makes him very small. The whole bit where Garrity's father was taken, he was basically a dissenter and he mouthed off a bit too much and the wrong people heard it. And one night the Major shows up outside his house with some goons and blows him away in front of his family. In the novel, his dad has just disappeared. One night they're in the kitchen, some guards come in, they march his dad out, and he's never seen from again, and they don't know what happened to him. And it's like this big kind of a mystery. And the Major shows up a handful of times throughout the book, and he never says much outside of an official capacity, like, okay, boys, you got a few more miles to go, and you're looking good, or something like that. And then at the end, he goes over to Garrity to award him the prize. And the ending of the novel, I'll leave to other people to discover on their own. It would not have been the most theatrical, i.e. narratively satisfying ending, because it is very ambiguous as to what condition Garrity was in when he won the walk. And that's all I'll say. But I want to go back to characters, because Mark, you mentioned Hank Olson, who's played by Ben Wang, who was in the new Karate Kid movie that came out over the summer.
Right. Oh yeah.
In this
movie.
In this film, hey, I liked that movie for what it was, mostly because,
oh dear God, that was the worst movie of the year. By far.
The worst movie of the year.
I have spoken.
And you are incorrect, sir. I'm going to put down the gauntlet. But anyway, we'll talk about the Karate Kid another time, or maybe not. But so this kid is playing Hank Olson. He's a shrimpy little dude who's got this weird Boston accent, a strange obsession with gum. Like, as long as I'm chewing the gum, I'm in the race. At the end of the film, or towards the end, he dies. And then it turns out the surviving members want to take up a collection for the wife he has back home. Now, I mentioned earlier that because they chopped a lot of the characters, the full cast of characters in half, they had to go and meddle with some of the secret origins or whatever. But this was probably the most egregious, because there is a character that was not in the film named Scram. And he was basically like Captain America. Like, he was a big kind of a country boy, chiseled dude, built like a brick shithouse. And he was the odds-on favorite to win the long walk, according to all the gambling markets. But he contracted a cold very on in the race. And through several of the days when they were walking through torrential downpours that would last for like 10 hours, he caught a severe case of pneumonia. And eventually he went up to a couple of the Native American kids in the front of the pack. Different portrayal in the film, from here, but basically they were exhausted, on the verge of death, and this guy was about to die too. And they basically sat down in front of the tanks and started speaking to each other in like their kind of native languages. It's unclear what they were talking about, but they basically got run over. This guy, Scram, had a wife and kid back home, and that's who he was walking for. And that was his motivation, is to set up his family for, generational success. And he was the most like wholesome and altruistic out of everybody in the group as far as what they talked about wanting. The fact that they took that character and put his motivation into that little Boston accented weasel, who I don't believe for a second ever had a wife and kid, it was a step too far. And what they also did was the Stebbins character, who's the Major's bastard, as we established, he gets a cold at the end. It turns out to be a really bad cold, and gee, shucks. They just, again, they're meddling, and I have no idea why.
And again, with me not knowing the book, just knowing the characters, though, it was like there were moments too in here that they could have even played up for dramatic effect that were small, but they would be big if you're doing the long walk. I.e., we have Garrity at one point near the end of the film lose his shoes.
Oh, yeah.
He loses his shoes. He removes his shoes. His feet are bloody. That's the only time it's ever addressed. He's otherwise walking fairly fine for miles in his bloodied feet in socks, and I'm just like, we're not even going to show maybe that he's in at least a little bit of pain. We're not going to, we're going to do dramatic. He steps on a rock or attack or something, and remind us that, oh yeah, by the way, this guy's got bare feet and this is the long walk. It's going to be a struggle. And it didn't even seem like a struggle for him. There are a few other moments in here too, where they could have played up something more than they did. Guys by the bridge, going over this bridge, I wanted to see someone try to just jump over the bridge, say, screw it, and fall over the edge of the bridge, and them going, that guy, whatever, he probably didn't survive, but leave it ambiguous. Like maybe somebody did survive by running, and the ending for me, they were playing it up as, let's not break the system, like, and this one wish in the movie. And I didn't know if that was in the book. And, for me, I'm like, why are you guys killing him? Make the wish that the general has to make the long walk.
Oh, and you know what, Mark, that would tie I don't think that would break the rules of the universe, because you can't like wish for the long walk to end, but you could wish for the general to have to, or the major to take the long walk. And that would tie in with, I think this came later, but Stephen King's Cat's Eye. There was that the one with Robert Hayes having to walk around the building. Yep. And at the end, he has the mob boss. Once he survives, he has to go and do it. Yeah. Well, there you go. See, you've already written a better film.
I was kind of hoping they would go for that, because they're talking about the obvious thing of, what we talked about, Ian, and I apologize for bringing it up. My shill is showing, but when we watched Death Race 2000, you had Frankenstein. This is Frankenstein with the grenade hand, for crying out loud, in the long walk is, I'm going to ask for a carbine and then I'm going to shoot the general. And I'm like, nah, don't do that. Yeah. I'm a vindictive bastard. If I make it to the end of the walk and I get one wish, it's not breaking the rules or I would like to see the general take the long walk.
Yeah.
That's in the context of the way they explain it, at least within the movie, it doesn't sound like that would break anything. And now the general, the major, who is this big tough guy who's playing like, I've been through hell and you guys got balls and you're manly men, puts him in a situation to where, okay, you either make the long walk, major, or you don't, and you show out that you wuss out. And then that takes away your character, that people will start to question, why didn't he take the long walk?
Mm-hmm. You see, and there is precedent for this, and that's the ending of The Mist, which has a much more ambiguous ending on the page of, are they going to make it? Whatever, they're going to keep driving until they find someplace. And then the film, obviously,
it still destroys me.
I love that ending. Don't
do. No, it's a wonderful wonderful change. And I hadn't read The Mist. I didn't know about the original ending until after I'd seen the film. I was like, this is a far superior, it's not better just because it's dark. It's because it's messed up, especially with the tanks rolling in like a minute and a half after he had to make that decision. It's just so good, but it's something where the people who adapted the material got the spirit of it enough and got King enough as a writer to say, we're going to out Stephen King in our version of this. And what you've suggested, Mark, I think is a way that they could have, I'm not saying it would have redeemed my experience of watching The Long Walk, but it might have come close, because I think that's the only ending I want to see at this point.
Yeah, that is a much better ending than, because look, I still love the movie, but there are some that is a nonsense. I didn't think that made sense, because I figured they explained it in the book, and this reinforces that you can't ask for the program to end. But yeah, how wonderfully cruel, how much Schadenfreude would you get by having the major walk 300 miles himself, or have him prove to everyone that he's a coward? That would have been great. And it would have been great with the fireworks in America the Beautiful playing too with it.
Yeah, I remembered something that I went off on a tangent about the major, but what I was getting at was, in the end, when McVrees shoots the major, And then he's just allowed to turn around and walk off. And it's not the sunset because it's night out time, but it would have been the way that world was set up, at least in the novel, and a little bit of it in the book or in the film, but not quite as much, is you get the feeling the crowd would have ripped McVries apart because they took away their main source of entertainment. Here's how you even make your ending better, Mark, is you have the major go start his long walk there at night, and then it cuts to black because the movie's over. Maybe give McVries a satisfied look on his face or something. Then you have a post-credit scene and it comes up and it's like sun beating down on an empty road. And it's like, day 7, mile 402 or something. You just see Mark Hamill stumbling all along. He's all fucked up and he's not quite dead yet, but he kind of wishes he was.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but I was kind of thinking they would go with that ending, and the ending we get in this movie was anticlimactic because, you built up to this character who, Garrity sacrificed himself basically because he saw McVries as the better character, because he was going to say, hey, I'm going to use this money. And, and Garrity doing what he's doing shouldn't have been really that big of a surprise to McVries. And I was kind of hoping for that epilogue too of, okay, you get Garrity die, everybody's celebrating McVries winning, and then cut to like 6 months or whatever later, and he's opened up a community center or something to help kids and names it after Garrity. You could even go that route if you want to with this guy. But what we get, it's like, and you're just like,
yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't think, well, I mean, Mike, I think I agree with the look on your face. I don't know. I think that might have been a bit too happy an ending.
Yeah.
You'd have to have Randall Flagg come over and it's like, hey, I like your community center, something like that, to make it a nice little dark twist.
That or he does a community center and he accidentally gets picked again for the long walk.
It should be like jury duty, man. You do it once and you can't.
Never ever again.
But no, the other thing that I neglected to mention is part of the complicated dynamic between Garrity and McVries is the relationship grows because McVries, and you see that once, maybe twice in this movie, but he saves Garrity from like wandering off the path, or like kind of he can be a shoulder to rely on when he's got like a Charlie horse or something to keep him going at that 3 miles an hour. And eventually the scale is tipped so far in one direction that Gary starts feeling guilty about the fact that McVries has saved him so often. And McVries is starting to feel resentment because he's like, we're getting down to the last, 20 people. I literally cannot keep doing this because it's me or you. And right around that time is when they make that pact among themselves of now it's every man for himself. And Garrity, from my recollection, hasn't had a chance to really do anything for McVries, but he's like, well, now I can't because we've all made this agreement. And so it's, again, there's much more dimension to their friendship because they're more amicable than frenemies, but they're not like, we're going to be best buds forever. And, there's going to be 2 winners from now on if I get my say. No.
2 winners. Yes.
Like I've been ragging.
Wait, no.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I don't know if it's the direction or if it's the screenplay, but I was really looking forward to this film, and from what I saw of the trailers, I was like, okay, it looks like they have the foundation for adapting this material. But now, having watched it, I'm just not impressed with anything. Nothing stands out as me saying this is worth watching outside of anything but a curiosity, especially if you're a fan of the novel.
And
go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, and while it sounds like I've been hard on the film, I didn't feel like I wasted my time. It's just that it was way too much familiarity for me. I was hoping for something a little bit more depth, a little bit more meaty, because the potential was there, and it just stayed for me surface level to where I'm like, okay. It's one of those, give me a surprise. I don't want to see it because I really enjoyed it. Heck, have McVrees die a little bit earlier and leave Garrity completely on his own. When there's like 10 of them, maybe have I don't want to see McVrees die necessarily, but there's a little bit more tension, a little bit more drama with this. And people may say, oh, Mark, you're a cold-hearted bastard because you don't think these people getting killed. I'm like, but you see it coming. And Mike, you're right. The more effective kills are the ones that happen in the distance when everybody else is trying to ignore it, and they boost the gunshot. Those are more effective and feel more brutal than the first kills we get, to where the one where they shoot him in the guy's face in a bad CGI and they stay on that shot. I'm like, the more scary, brutal kills tend to be those quicker ones, but they use the heavy gunshot, because you get that in I'm going to bring it up, Beverly Hills Cop. Beverly Hills Cop has one of the most brutal kills I've seen in a film. It's quick, it's effective, it's done from a distance, it's gritty, but all it is he knocks the Axel F's buddy down, and he takes 2 shots to the head, and the gunshot, there's no music or nothing. It's just pop, pop in a distance. I'm like, that's more spooky than full on shot. Kaboom.
Well, here's the thing. I actually didn't mind it. I just didn't like how long they held on the shot, because then you could see how fake the prosthetic looked. But I did like how they mixed up between graphic kills and off-screen kills, because it didn't just feel like shock value. It just kind of felt like what would happen if you're actually in this situation where people are dying in front of you. It wouldn't be pretty. But I mean, the opening title, though, it's like kid's face comes apart, slam cut to the title. It's like the director saying, "You see, I can be gory. I'm not just Mr. Pussy Ass Hunger Games." Yeah, fucking battle royale for tweens, or Twilight Battle Royale is what I call it. Yeah,
I happen to like Hunger Games. So.
Look, I
have a whole theory as to why, but yeah.
I like the first Hunger Games, and then after that, I think they just got longer and progressively worse. And I don't care about their love triangle. And
I enjoyed the second one better than the first one. I think that one, at least as far as the movie goes, was a little bit more interesting for me. But even still, I think it boils down to the screenplay. This screenplay writer here, he did the Lynch film. Was it A Stranger Darling? What was it? He hasn't done much. J.T. Malner, he did what was it? Yeah, Strange Darling is the other film that he did a couple of years ago. And that was the big one everybody thought, because it was a date that turned into a killing spree type of thing. I actually haven't seen that one. That one I don't remember actually watching, but
I don't know if I've seen that one.
He wrote and directed that one, and so he wrote this script. And I think maybe this was a little bit too large of an undertaking too soon, maybe for him. I'm not sure, because it really focuses on the kills more so. I mean, we get people moments, but it's still it felt like, oh, here we go. We haven't had a kill in a few minutes. We got to have someone go do that. And again, if you watch the trailer, not so much the gory front kills, but all of those secondary kills that we get in this film, nearly all of them happen in the trailer. Yeah. I mean, it was like, oh, there's the guy running towards the storefront. He's going to get shot. Oh, there's that guy running with the, it was like.
Yeah. And, again, you get a bit more out of having 100 people, because as it goes on, the humanity of the overall characters begins to fade away, and it becomes more about this core group of people. And so you'll have something like Garrity will nod off, and he'll wake up, and then he'll be like, "How many do we lose last night?" And you're like, 14. And they just become these things that they're improving the people who's left, their odds of surviving, but then you're like, but these were also people, they're not just numbers. And so the people who are on the long walk almost start to see themselves and the people around them as
Numbers.
non-human, almost the way that the audience and the major perceives them as well, which is, also kind of messes with their heads. If this had been an A24 movie, I think it would have you would have had more chance to get into something a bit more a bit artsier and more, dare I say, lofty, because I mean, this thing is not about the kills or the graphic violence. Those are like side effects to it. And I think if you had just like one really grotesque headshot and the rest of it be kind of implied or just heard, like every once in a while, just like in the novel, they'll be walking along and there'll be a gunshot in the back. And initially it's a big thing. Everyone jumps and looks and they're freaked out. But towards the end, it's just remarked. And they'll say, and the walk went on, or they kept walking. I hope that someone, just like we've been through the part in the 80s where Stephen King's, like, everything he wrote was adapted to TV or movies. Now we're getting to the part where they're remaking a lot of those adaptations. I'm hoping in 10, 20 years, someone decides, hey, let's remake The Long Walk and do it right.
Mm.
But yeah, any closing thoughts on The Long Walk?
If you want to feel like absolute crap, go see The Long Walk. And if you actually, but I will say, if you're looking for a movie that is something that will challenge you, maybe not so much emotionally, but viscerally, go check it out. But right now with today's current events, it just makes The Long Walk too much of a, hey, guess what we're commenting on, kind of bummer.
Yeah.
No, the commentary, it's relevant yet almost too relevant, to the point of just how soon after 9/11 they made 9/11 movies. It's just like, really, guys? Really?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even, seriously, and so this is, with politically charged culture that we have today, I can see where it's going to make people uncomfortable. I will say, and pardon my old man speak, okay, if you're of a certain age and you haven't watched, like when I was a kid, a lot of war films, this is gonna impact you more. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I fully recognize that. Again, I'm old and not cold, okay, but I wasn't really affected. But then again, when I was too young, yet I was still watching Platoon, Hamburger Hill, Full Metal Jacket, Uncommon Valor. I mean, the Vietnam films did not hold back by any means. So if you watch those a lot and then you watch this, you're like, oh, okay, because you do get a bit desensitized, or just you're recognizing the elements and you're like, okay, I see what's coming and I see what they're doing here. If you don't watch a lot of war films, if you're going into this going, oh, a Stephen King book, oh, look I like these actors, I'm going to go in, oh, holy crap, Mark Hamill's playing a heavy, I can see where this is going to affect people. And I can see where, like, especially a lot of the younger critics are really being impacted by this film. And I never will really, short anybody or pick on anybody for how they see a film. We all like,
that's my job. That's my job.
That's your job.
Yeah.
You all see something differently, and it's all your experiences. So if you grew up in 2000 and you're going to see this, I can definitely see where it's going to impact you more than, say, you coming from the Gen X generation, to where you grew up in the Cold War and war pictures were so standard and brutal and dark, and that you look at this and go, yeah, okay.
Oh yeah, I mean, like the day after was a TV movie. I mean, that's the
the one about the nuclear war.
The other one was, they literally did this where I didn't catch the opening, the disclaimer they did before the commercial scene. They did a faux broadcast on TV with live actors, as if there was a dirty bomb and a nuclear bomb went off in, I forgot where it was, LA or Portland or something. And they did it like a news broadcast to where it actually happened.
Like War of the Worlds style.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, like
Kind
some
of War of the
Welles
World
stuff,
style, but it was on
Dang.
TV. And I caught it in like, I caught it a third of the way in. So being again, I'm like, what the hell? And then I'm like, wait, I don't recognize these anchors. And then there was a commercial break. When it came back, it said the following, but it was like, whoa.
Yeah.
So I think it's where you come from as well. I think people who are of the younger generation who didn't grow up with war pictures, because you had MCU and that, and there haven't been a lot of actual war pictures done in the last 20 some years. If you think about it, like the gritty one, I think this is going to affect you quite a bit. I'll put it that way. But if you're older folk like me, you're going to go, yeah, I've seen this before and done with more impact and more bravery as far as what to show and how to handle it than what they do here. So that's my final thought.
I'm a big fan of war films, so I didn't really mind it being like other war films because I kind of saw that's what they were going for. So even though it was a bit overt and trite, it still didn't quite bother me because at least they were using the conventions of the genre.
Right.
Strengthen the narrative. Yeah.
It's fun to see a variation of it, it's like basically, okay, this is a war picture without the actual war scenes. It's like if you cut all those quiet moments when they're in camp or on patrol and put them together.
See, whenever I hear America the Beautiful, I always just think of the ending of The Deer Hunter. Oof, every time I see it.
This is a casualty, not of war, but of being a lifelong Star Wars fan. At the end of this movie, which takes place in the dark and the rain after McFreeze has won the race, and he asks for the rifle, and he trains it on the Major. The Major Mark Hamill is wearing aviator sunglasses in the dark, of course, and a rain slicker. And all I could think of was it's old man Luke Skywalker. Because he's like standing with his hands out, and I was like, is he going to use the force to like levitate the gun out of his hand?
or it's kind of like when he stands off against Kylo Ren, and like, oh, you're going to here to try to redeem me? No, it'd be kind of like that moment.
There is that stigma with him, unfortunately, and his performance wasn't bad. It's the screenplay for me that I think just did not work for me. All the other elements, but it's just the screenplay.
I love Mark Hamill as an actor, but I thought that performance sounded more like the Joker than George S. Patton. And it just, I couldn't buy it. Just come on, boys, we're gonna do like, what are you doing, man? It sounded too
well.
and
it's especially unfortunate because a few months ago he was in The Life of Chuck, the other Stephen King adaptation, and he was so good in that movie, like actually playing a real character with dimension, and he was still recognizable, but he didn't scream like, oh, it's Mark Hamill doing a bit. It was like, oh, that's what it looks like for Mark Hamill to act. And it was it's an impactful movie and an impactful character, so I know people were excited to see him in this, and I was too, given what I'd seen a few months ago. But now I'm like, well, he's paying the bills. Bless you, Mike. All right. Well, I think that's a good as place to end it as any. I don't even know if that was a real sentence because my laptop is not plugged in and it's about to die. So, folks out there, thank you very much for hanging out and talking The Long Walk. We did have a couple of comments though, real quick. If I can bring these up, why can't I show them? Oh, there is. Jeremy Cook says, a Monday night roundtable. What a treat. Indeed. Thank you, Jeremy. And also
Stream
MB
Boo.
Reach. Yeah, cheap followers on Stream Boo. Remove the space. That's a tip for y'all out there. So I still have to look into that cheap follower thing, but I appreciate the help. Anyway, thank you all for hanging out, watching live and or on the replay. We appreciate it. If you like The Long Walk or if you hated The Long Walk, let us know what you thought. and what you thought of our analysis. You can always leave a comment and we will check them out. Next week, we'll be back probably on Wednesday night, I imagine at 8 Central, talking about the new Jordan Peele movie, Him, which I'm very excited to see. I've no idea like what I have an idea what it's about, but I have no idea what it's going to be like. One of the most fascinating trailers I've seen in a while.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But thank you very much for joining us. We are Earth's Mightiest Critics. I am Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat, Mark the Movie Man Krawczyk of the Spoiler Room Podcast and Special Mark Productions, who, as we mentioned, he hosted a roundtable last night, a live stream about Death Race 2000, which if you haven't seen the movie, see the movie. If you have seen the movie, watch that podcast because it's a lot of fun. And Mike Crowley, if you'll probably agree, aka YPA Reviews. Thank you very much, sir. And until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thank you very much and take care.